Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening to the listening public, the people here on Nevis, those in St. Kitts, those, of course, in the wider Caribbean. Good evening to our friends and family in the United States and Canada, those in the United Kingdom, wherever you are and you're listening this evening, good evening to you. Let me specifically mention our friends and family in places like Anguilla, St. Martin, Statia, Saba, of course, down in the U.S. Virgin Islands, St. Thomas, St. Croix, St. John, and of course in the British Virgin Islands as well, Tortola, Virgin Gorda, Antigua, wherever you might be this evening. Good evening to you. Welcome to another edition of On The Mark. I'm your host, Mark Brantley, and of course we are here every Wednesday with something that we hope is of some interest to you, the members of the public. This show is a call-in program, and it means therefore that when the lines open, you have the ability to call and put your own issues on the table, or to raise, of course, your own points in relation to issues that we are discussing. As you may know, we are looking very carefully at mental health here on the island of Nevis and seeking to do our best in relation to raising awareness, removing stigma, and ensuring that those who require care are able to receive that care. And we will get into that in a moment. But before we do, let me take a moment to express some condolences. We have had a tragic circumstance here on the island since we were last here, of a young female being, we are told, found dead in her home next to a young male with whom she had a relationship and had two children. Those two children have now been left, of course, without parents. And so they have been orphaned by the unfortunate actions, it appears, of this male. And I would really want to start by extending condolences to all those who mourn. Particularly, I would want to extend condolences to the family of the young lady, and certainly to these young children. I'm told both of whom are, the older is in kindergarten and the younger is not yet in school. And so very, very young children who have had a tragic loss of losing both of their parents in really horrible circumstances. I'm also told that another young woman was unfortunately badly injured in this incident and that she's hospitalized, and so I would want to extend my prayers for her speedy recovery. The situation here, ladies and gentlemen, is, I believe, testament to the ongoing difficulty we have in our culture. And I say in our culture because there is a feeling, it seems in some quarters, that men in particular have a right to abuse women, that men have some right given to them, it appears, some may feel, to take advantage of the females and the girls in their lives. I grew up in Nevis. I'm a Nevisian, I'm a Caribbean person, and so I have had the benefit of traveling to every island in the Caribbean. I have studied at the University of the West Indies. I'm a Caribbean person, and I interact with other Caribbean people, and particularly men, and the perception that some of them seem to have, whether through their upbringing, whether through what they've seen in society, is that somehow the women in their lives are property. I know this may sound controversial, but it is true that a lot of men, I think, are of the misconception that the women in their life belong to them, and not belong to them in a good way, but belong to them in a way that if something were to go wrong, they seem to feel that they have some right to discipline, some right to take action, because this is their woman, and that seems to be the attitude, and that somehow they feel makes them macho. I have my own views on that. I think that any man who raises his hand to a woman is really a very unfortunate excuse for mankind, and I feel very strongly that all of us should condemn this type of behavior wherever it happens, and wherever we see it happening, we should condemn it. We should not be shy of getting involved, calling the police. A lot of times people say, I'm not getting involved because that's a man and woman business. I think all of us hear that. That too is part of our culture. But a lot of women, and I specify women, although I know men out there saying, well, some men are abused as well, and I understand that, but it's primarily women and girls. And a lot of women and girls are being abused and are suffering. And I think that we have a pandemic on our hands in our region, in our Caribbean region, that all of us, and those of us like myself who have a voice, we need to lend our voice. We need to speak out. I'm married to a woman. All of us are product of a woman. We came from a woman. And in my case, I have 2 daughters. And I don't know what would happen if any man were to be so bold as to lift his hand to any of my daughters. And I say that candidly this evening, because I feel that strongly about it. I think that those of you out there who are going around, who are seeking to hit, who are seeking to abuse in some way women and girls, and who feel that it makes you macho, that really and truly it doesn't. I think that it is a horrible, horrible thing that some of us are engaged in. I think it needs to stop, and I believe that those in society need to condemn it unreservedly. Whether it's happening and wherever it's happening, we need to condemn it. I think that those in the society, those neighbors who know it's happening, who hear the commotion, they need to call the police. I think the police themselves need to get involved. They need to be more aggressive in relation to these matters. And I speak to the police, and sometimes the police say things to me like, well, the women complain, but when we go and we try to prosecute and we try to get serious, the women say no, they're not going to press charges. That's a constant problem that we seem to have. And maybe we need to get to a point now where the law is changed so that the evidence of the victim is not necessary. That if there's sufficient evidence from others, then you prosecute. I was appalled today, for example, to learn that in an office in the heart of Charlestown, a man decided to assault his wife in full view of everybody and bloodied her face. And then, when all that was over and the police came, apparently the wife indicated that she has no interest in pressing charges because he's the mother of her children. And I am concerned about these types of developments, because if he is the mother of her children, then certainly as the father, if he is the father of her children, and certainly as the father of her children, he should never have disrespected his wife in that way. And I shudder to think, if he's prepared to do that in public, what would he do in private? And we all need to speak up, and men, and as a man myself, I think men need to shoulder some of this responsibility of speaking up. This is not a female issue. This is not a woman's issue. This is a societal issue. And when we engage in violence in the home, our children see it. Our men, youth, are normalized. They think that this is the way to behave. So when they go out and they have relationships, that's how they behave as well. The woman must watch what she say and watch how she behave, and don't come in late and out hanging out with friends, and you feel that somehow you have a child. This is your child to be disciplined. Not even your children you should be disciplining in this way. And I think, unfortunately, when these matters are not checked and our behavior is not checked, that these horrible emotions that we have, this propensity for cruelty, that it takes hold. And when that happens, of course, we end up in tragedy. And so I feel, and I would want to think, that the tragedy that unfolded in Nevis a few days ago, that should not go in vain. That we ought to learn from it as a community, and we ought collectively to vow that it should never again happen here. It is not the first time that it has happened in Nevis. It is certainly not the first time that it has happened in the Federation. We need to put an end to domestic abuse and domestic violence. And there's absolutely no excuse for it. I'm hearing talk of a woman having another man, for example. If a woman has another man and you can't deal with it, walk away. It's as simple as that. Go fish in the ocean and find another woman. Or if she has another man, you deal with it. But it cannot justify you deciding to take up whatever, to hit her, to abuse her, to whatever it may be that you're doing. And you know the irony, and as I said, as a man, let me speak plainly. The irony is that a lot of men out there who say they're so macho, they're running women all over the place. And then when they're woman at home, they hear the woman have a man, they're gone crazy. We can't live like this. And maybe these are topics that are beyond my pay grade, in the sense that they're experts who can more adequately explain and deal with and delve into all the ins and outs. But I think all of us have a moral compass, and all of us understand right and wrong. And none of us own anybody else. The days of slavery are long over in the Caribbean. If you have a partner, treat your partner with respect. If you say you're in love with your partner, then treat them with love. People who love people don't abuse them. And that is the simple truth. We have in this culture a notion of, oh, if he no hit me, he no love me. This kind of foolishness that we say. These things need to stop. These things need to stop. And I think all of us need to condemn it. Stop cuddling people who engage in this type of behavior. When they come to the rum shop and they're drinking the rum and they just beat up the wife or the woman at home, tell them you don't want to associate with them. It is not macho behavior, it's childish behavior, it is stupid behavior. And let us call it for what it is. And these people need to be locked up. The police need to get involved, and the community needs to cooperate with the police to make sure that these people are treated with the harshest possible penalties. A lot of people are suffering in silence on this island and in this country and in our region. A lot of people have been suffering for a long time. And I believe it is high time that we bring an end to domestic abuse and domestic violence wherever it is happening. And it happens in low places, it happens in high places. It happens in poor families, it happens in wealthy families. There's no section of the society which is immune from this type of behavior. And I want to condemn it unreservedly. Let me move on quickly to send a note of condolence to the family of Bernadette Callender. She lived in Toronto, and her funeral services, I'm told, are going to be this Saturday at 10 a.m. at 4545 Jane Street, the Christian Center Church. And so I am hopeful that Divisions in Canada would go out and give a good send-off to Bernadette Callender, and to her family I extend my deepest condolences. It is always a difficult time when we have to confront death, because death is so final. And whilst it comes to all of us, for many of us it comes suddenly, and sometimes it comes in a form and in a way that we did not anticipate. And so I am to express to all of those who mourn our deepest condolences, and to say, as I always say, that I hope the prayers of the multitude will comfort them in their hour of bereavement, in their hour of sadness, in their hour of darkness. Ladies and gentlemen, we have been celebrating and raising awareness and paying attention to mental health. And I started out talking about the tragedy that we experienced just 2 days ago here. But that perhaps is an aspect of what we need to talk about in the context of mental health, and whether or not we are raising awareness enough to have the type of society that we truly want, where people treat each other with respect, where people live together, cooperate, love each other, be each other's keeper, as I like to say, the brother's keeper, your sister's helper. We have to work towards a kinder, gentler society if we are to get the kind of Nevis and the kind of St. Kitts and Nevis that we want and that we deserve. And so tonight I have a very special guest. He is from the mental health unit that we have here on the island of Nevis, and I think it is an opportune time to not only to introduce him and have him take over the show and tell us what we are doing here from the mental health unit, but also as a government, and what it is we hope to achieve. And so without further ado, I welcome you, sir, to the show. Please introduce yourself and tell the public why you're here. Welcome to the show. I think this is your first time on the Mark. It's a very, very big platform, so people are listening all across the world. So I turn the show over to you and give you the opportunity to introduce yourself and to tell us what we're doing here on the island of Nevis in terms of mental health.
Okay, good night. Thank you, Premier, for having me on your show tonight. It's indeed a pleasure and a privilege to be here. My name is Macmillan Coffey. Let me say good night to the listening audience out there. I am a counselor at the mental health unit here on Nevis, and as you know, as you may know, Mental Health Day is observed globally on October 10th every year, globally. And so we are celebrating a week of activities to commemorate the Mental Health Day. The theme for this year is making mental health and well-being for all a global priority. And so we in Nevis, we would like to, we have a week of activities, actually. As I said, we start on Sunday. We start with a church service at the Emma's Chapel in Charlestown. And then on Monday, we had a walkthrough. The premier and the officials from the Ministry of Health visited our space, our office space. A lot of you may not know, but the mental health unit was housed at the Alexandria Hospital for a very long time. But with the need and the demands of the service, the mental health services, we thought it would be best to have a more spacious and comfortable space to provide the services, mental health services for the persons here on Nevis. And so we are presently, for the last 3 months or so, we are located on Cedar Grove in Prospect. Now, for those of you who may not be aware, that building used to be the seniors' home, senior citizens' home. Later, more recently, it was a community center. And most recently, it was identified as the COVID isolation center. It was never used because we did not get so inundated with COVID that we had to use it. But it was reserved for that purpose. And so now that we are in a better place with COVID-19, this building is now used by the mental health unit in Prospect. In terms of directions, if you're coming up by the agro-processing plant, by the Nevlek power station, that road coming up straight, you can go either right to the government's garage or left to Prospect. When you go up left on the brow of the hill, right in the intersection, there's that green building right in front of you. That's Cedar Grove. That's us right there. So we'll come back to this in a little while in terms of our facility. But I want to just give a little information in terms of the week or the day, Mental Health Day, and what it signifies. So Mental Health Day is that day set aside, to provide the opportunity for all stakeholders working on mental health issues to talk about the work that we do and what more needs to be done to make mental health a reality for people worldwide. It's an opportunity to increase awareness about what mental health interventions work and what does not work and what we should be doing differently. The Nevis Island Administration, together with the Mental Health Unit, like the World Health Organization, envisions a world in which mental health is valued, promoted, and protected, where everyone has an equal opportunity to enjoy mental health and to exercise their human rights, and where everyone can access the mental health care that they need. And so really that in a nutshell is the purpose for setting that one day aside to highlight and to increase the awareness, the sensitivity and the advocacy of mental health. So just to give you an idea of what we do at the unit, there are a lot of misconceptions and misperceptions of what the mental health unit is about. And as we know, the stigma of mental health is huge on the island of Nevis, to a point where I think it's crippling crippling in the sense that the persons who are in need of the services, because of that stigma, refuse to come in, refuse to access the services because they don't want people to see them coming in, because they don't want to be branded, with all the names that persons call them out there. These names are not names that we use as professionals, If you come to us, we see you, we sit with you, we have an interview with you, and we take what we call a history. And based on our history, we do a diagnosis. Based on our diagnosis, we do a treatment plan. And based on our treatment plan, then we work with you to help you to alleviate the symptoms of your disorder. But these names that persons call the people who are afflicted with mental illness are the very reasons why people do not want to come in. And this is something that we take very seriously at the mental health unit, and hence the reason tomorrow, Thursday, the 13th, we have a stigma and discrimination workshop at the Anglican Church Hall. And that is one of many where we want to educate the public in terms of, as it regards to stigma and discrimination and prejudice against persons afflicted with mental illness. It's a half-a-day workshop from 9 to 1, and we want to take this opportunity to thank PAHO, the Pan American Health Organization, for partnering with us and making this workshop possible. So on Monday, as I said, we had the walkthrough of our new facility in Prospect. And let me take the opportunity to really thank the Ministry of Health of the Nevis Island Administration for really, making mental health a priority on the island. As I've always said, I've been attached to the unit for 2 years. I've always said, I'll continue to say, that I am very proud of the mental health program here on the island of Nevis. I believe, and I'll say that with no fear of contradiction, that the Nevis Island, the mental health unit here, it's a model for many islands in the region. We run a community-based program here, and I think it's robust. I think it meets the clients. I know it meets the clients where they are, and provide and ensure that these clients get the best of care. And this is the trend, community mental health. No more the days when you have an acute psychiatric unit or a chronic psych unit and you just like treat persons with meds. And these in a lot of ways have lent or given people some of the perceptions, I would say, of mental health and mental illness. But when you go out there and you meet the people out there and you interact with them and you engage them, I think this is really what mental health ought to be about. And I want to applaud the Nevis Island Administration, the Ministry of Health, for what they're doing. There's a lot of talk, but when persons actually, how we say it in local parlance, put your money where your mouth is, where you invest in your people. As you say, the investment of your people are that's the biggest investment, your people. And so I'm really appreciative of that. I invite the entire public to come in and visit our facility in Prospect. Now, I must say that mental health is an envy to many. I've been, I have the privilege now to head the unit. And up to yesterday and today, people want to come to work at mental health. Before, we could hardly get persons to want to come to work at mental health because of the stigma. But now mental health seems to be an envy to many, and that speaks volumes. That says that something good is happening on Nevis, And I invite the public, come see the facility. It's one thing to have a building, but if the building is not conducive to what it is supposed to be doing, then we have a problem. And so, Minister, you would have had the privilege to visit our facility on Monday, and I'm sure you will agree that the facility is very comfortable, spacious, and conducive for the services that we provide. And so, it's open to the public. Please come in, visit. In terms of the week of activities, we also had an award ceremony right after the walkthrough. We felt that was very important to do because, as I say, we run a community mental health program. This is not a one-man show. It cannot be just the unit. We depend on everybody to make mental health a success here on the island. And so we have partners, we have stakeholders who make our work easier, who facilitate the work that we do. And so we honored 5 persons on Monday. Out of the 5, there were 3 police officers. And I'm very proud of that. We had one officer from the Charlestown police station, and we had 2 from the Newcastle police station. And the Newcastle police station and Charlestown have been very, very supportive. And I want to put it out there and say, let others take a leaf out of the books of those officers. As we say, the stigma where persons have misconceptions and misperceptions of mental health, of mental illness. And, a lot of that is really just myths, that persons have about, mentally ill persons. But these persons, we felt that we had to honor them because of the contribution that they make and the advocacy that that they put out there for persons with mental illness. And so that was also on Monday. And then in the afternoon we had a recreation day activity for our clients at the E.T. Willett Park. Some know it as Grove Park, and that went well also. It went very well. That was on Monday. On Tuesday we had a mocktail competition. Why a mocktail competition? And I want to stress it was mocktail and not cocktail. And there's a difference. A mocktail competition is a drink where there's no alcohol. And that's the purpose, because one of the issues that we deal with in mental health is a lot of substance abuse, including alcohol abuse. And we wanted to really send a message out there that one can have a very nice, delicious, enjoyable, refreshing drink without having alcohol. And that was what it was about. So we had like 6 persons from different institutions here, different bars and so on the island, come up with something original. And I must admit it went really well. Very nice recipes, and the drinks really, they were refreshing. I think Catch It was the winner, the overall winner, and that was great. I think I heard a comment that somebody said they're happy that Catch It won because the young lady who represented Catch It beat her teacher, because he was also one of the competitors, which was great. That means he's a good teacher. He did a fine job. So that's good. So that's our mocktail competition on Tuesday. On Wednesday, which was that's today, we had a health screening. We do usual glucose, blood pressure, and what we added to that though was the anxiety and depression screening. It's just fitting that for Mental Health Week, if we have a health screen, to do some mental health screening. And so we felt that we could administer, a self-report questionnaire, just to see where people are at, the levels of depression and anxiety, and BMI checks and all of that. So that was great. That went well. Tomorrow is a big day for us. I think that's the highlight of this week's activity, the Stigma and Discrimination Workshop. And again, thanks to Power for partnering with us on that. Tomorrow, Friday, we open to the public from 8 to 1, and then there's a staff retreat from 1 to 4. And on Saturday, we bring down the curtains on the week of activities with a walk. Let's get physical. It's dubbed Let's Get Physical, and that starts at the Malcolm Gishard Park, onto Penis Road, onto the Bypass Road, up at the Pump Road, towards the roundabout by IJ. We turn down to town onto the, I think, Honkies Drive. Then we go back onto the Bayfront towards Penis and back to the park. And so that's, we can't talk about mental health without talking about exercise. when we look at mental health, when we look at health, we have to look at health in a holistic manner. And we think, yes, the physical health, the mental health, or emotional health, is all part of what it has to come together. It's like a machine, it's like a vehicle. If one part is not working, then you have problems. Everything has to be in sync. And so we felt that it would be important to have an exercise. And so that is the week of activities for this week, for Mental Health Week.
Well, you've certainly given us a tremendous amount of information. Certainly, I want to commend you. I had the opportunity to, as you say, do the walkthrough. I believe it was on Monday.
That's right.
At the new facility in Prospect, and I was very, very impressed. I agree with you. I can understand why people now want to work there, because the environment is very comfortable. Clearly, we invested significantly in improving the environment, but also in moving that facility from the hospital, where we were borrowing space for a very long time, to now a purpose facility that was repurposed for this use. And so I'm very, very happy. I think it is a giant leap forward for mental health care in the island. And what we have seen, particularly during COVID, was, I suppose, because of the restrictions, the frustrations, people lost their jobs, people were cooped up at home, having curfews and the like, that a lot of people who perhaps were on the margin, so to speak, got pushed over the edge.
Absolutely.
And so we had, larger numbers of individuals needing mental health care.
That's right.
And I am very happy to see that as a government and as a leader of government, we have really stepped up and are taking this seriously. I believe the facility is well staffed, the facility is very welcoming, and there is ample space there to treat. And I particularly like the suggestions that I heard when I was there about the occupational therapy, I think it was called.
Absolutely.
So I even learned some new terminology while I was there. But in terms of engaging with clients, ensuring that the people who are there have a comfortable environment. I was also impressed that we actually have beds there. Mm-hmm. We have ability to have people spend time. I was very impressed to hear that we are providing things like showers and laundry to wash clothes, laundry services to some persons who might be homeless.
Absolutely.
On the island. And I think these are very important initiatives. So for me, I love the way you ended by saying that your mental health, your physical health, and your emotional health have to be in sync. And I think a lot of us ignore one or the other, or sometimes two or the other. Sometimes some of us ignore all three. And so you find that it is not enough that you're just going out exercising and going to the gym. You also have to work on, as you say, your emotional health. You have to work on your mental health.
Right.
And where you require assistance, I think the public should know that assistance is available. Going back to what I said earlier in the context of domestic abuse, because I think some of that is triggered by people who are not in a good place in terms of their emotional health.
Absolutely.
Not in a good place sometimes in terms of their mental health. And so it triggers that type of abusive behavior. I therefore feel that in light of the tragic circumstances of Monday, that this, in a way, gives us an opportunity to talk about how these things are interlinked, and how they are connected in terms of our experience, our shared experience as human beings, and in the society, our experience as individuals. And certainly I think there's a correlation between your mental and emotional health and things like domestic abuse, child abuse, any kind of abuse,
Certainly.
violence in the community.
Certainly.
And so I want the public to appreciate that if you can get this right, you deal with a lot of other issues which might be the symptoms of mental health problems or the symptoms of emotional health problems, as the case may be. So that, to my mind, even emphasizes more, or brings greater emphasis to the importance of mental health.
Absolutely.
And I think that, I would want to trumpet what you've said about trying to stamp out stigma, trying to ensure that our people understand. Somebody said to me one time, and we're using colloquial parlance now. I know the language is inadequate and perhaps even offensive, but I will use it because it's local parlance. You know, here you like to say people crazy. That is the language that is employed. It is not modern language. It is not language that is now acceptable. But we say so. And somebody, an old man told me one time, he said, everybody crazy. And I thought it was a strange thing to say. I said, what do you mean by that? And he explained that in certain circumstances, based on the pressures, based on what somebody is going through, that all of us have that capacity to be tip over to what we might consider to be outside the usual mental health that we might say is normal. So, you know, somebody suddenly loses their job. Somebody has a tragedy in their life, a terrible accident that takes a loved one or something. And that is the reason why I feel that it behooves all of us to understand that all of us have within us the same type of makeup that can potentially lead us in that direction.
Definitely.
So a lot of people, for example, suffer quietly. They have moments when they are depressed. They have moments when their anxiety levels are very high. I spoke to a friend of mine recently who said that he was having tremendous difficulties at work, and so he started to have high blood pressure. He started to experience, you know, and the two are connected. So we have to appreciate that being right in terms of our mental health, getting the care that we need, being able to access that care, understanding that all of us at some point might need counseling, might need assistance, that it is something that is a part. It's just, you know, for example, Mr. Coffee, if you tomorrow were to say, well, all right, you have a cold, there's no stigma attached to that.
Exactly.
Because everybody understands everybody could get a cold.
Right.
You know? We need to get to a point, I think, in a society where people also appreciate that many of us are just one incident away.
Absolutely. You're absolutely correct. Yeah, you're right.
I mean, one little thing away, one pressure point away from also needing care and needing that type of intervention. And so I think that is why I believe that this is so important, that we focus our attention on things like mental health, not only for the weak, but we continue the effort that has been happening.
And I like what you just said. You know, continue what we are doing, and there's always room for improvement, which gives me the opportunity to give you a preview, you know, and some insight into some of the programs that we're looking at. So in planning for this week's activities, we had a meeting with POW, and they're excited. They're ready to do work with us, and I'm excited. The whole issue of stigma and discrimination, we feel like there's a lot of work that needs. If we're going to talk about stigma and discrimination, it has to be psychoeducation. And how do we do that? I mean, I think we need to introduce that from the school level, from the primary school level, secondary and up. You know, because you mentioned the word culture earlier on. What is culture? Is the way, you know, that persons in a particular society really live by, the norms by which they, you know, they live, you know. And so how can we change that? Culture is not easily changed. It's a continuous process, and it's hard work. It's not going to change overnight, but we have to start somewhere. And so I believe one of the programs that we really want to get on the way is the mental health, school mental health programs, where we address the issue of stigma and discrimination. So that is big. I feel passionate about that because I know not only in Nevis, but in small island states from where I come from, Dominica, and all the islands in the region, we see it. You know, it may be more prevalent in certain islands than others, but it is there. It's a problem, and not just in the small island states. I mean, look at the research on stigma and discrimination. You know, there are always big programs in Canada, in the UK, in America about stigma and discrimination. These are huge cosmopolitan countries, and it exists. So imagine small islands like us, where we are what, 12, 15,000 persons, everybody in everybody's business. Just imagine. So it is a problem. It's that we cannot ignore. And so I'm looking forward to really push that. And so come early next year, Gospel Our Lives is something that we're really going to take on board. I also want to talk about the disaster mental health program that they're proposing. I think that too is great. And I love that because that's my second passion, disaster management. And I see a good marriage between disaster management and mental health issues. I mean, you just spoke about it, Minister, when you spoke about, trauma. Imagine that you just lost a loved one through some tragic, that is trauma. And if that's not treated, we talk about post-traumatic stress disorder. And, that can be a serious problem in our society. So how do we, blend mental health with disaster management? And so that's a discussion we need to have at some point. I think that there needs to be a training with our first responders. Too often we are professionals say they are not trained to deal with those kind of persons. Just that statement in itself is discriminatory. That statement itself is highly stigmatized. This kind of person. What do you mean, this kind of persons? So if you are professional and you feel that you do not have the training that you need to execute your functions, then let's help you. How can we partner with these first responders to ensure that they have the training that they need so that when a call is made, that we can respond and we can respond appropriately? Okay? That whole issue of the misconceptions and perceptions, how can we change that? How can we educate people to rethink, to restructure that mindset about persons who suffer from mental illness? Nevis is small. And what I come to realize that for the 2 years I've been there is that a lot of Nevisians are related one way or the other. You may not be a first or second cousin, you may not be a brother or sister, but some way. So, you said it earlier on. Let's all be each other's keeper. You know what I mean? Our Mental Health Act is something that needs to be revised. I've browsed through it a couple of times and I come to realize that it's obsolete. It's archaic. It needs to be revised to reflect the time in which we live. And so that too, it's a conversation we are having with Power to see how they can assist us to get that, to reflect the work that we do. And so there's a lot of work to be done. But having said that, we have to be proud as a small nation, island, Nevis. It's easy for us to take things for granted. It's easy for us to compare ourselves with other persons. But I think people need to take a time out and reflect and see the good things that are happening here. And I'm telling you, by the fact that persons are now asking to come to mental health, that was unheard of before. Persons shied away from mental health. Why now people feel like it's a place that they want, they desire to come to work? Something good is happening. And so we have to pay attention to that. But not to get so carried away and lose sight of the focus that there still is a lot to be done.
Good. All right, Mr. Coffey, I don't know if you have anything further for us, but if not, we would like to thank you very much for coming here and for sharing some of your time with us. I think that this is a very, very important issue, the issue of mental health. I would want to end this segment by saying exactly what you said, that we must care for our physical health, our mental health, and our emotional health, and that they all three go together in ensuring that we have the quality of life that we would want. We need to build a Nevis that is kind, a Nevis that is gentle, a Nevis that is loving, a Nevis where we look out for each other, where we are our brother's keeper and our sister's helper. We need to look out for each other. I keep emphasizing that, because if we are looking out for each other, a lot of ills that we experience as a society can be dealt with and can be minimized. This notion of saying that is not my business, or that don't bother me, so it don't affect me. You see a crime happening, you refuse to report it to the police because you're not getting involved. Well, the next day the crime might be happening to you. And I'm sure if it's happening to you, you would want people to get involved. I'm reminded always about this story of the Good Samaritan. I like to go back to these childhood things that I learned in Sunday school. And If I get them wrong from time to time, I apologize. But Sunday school was a long time ago for me. But there was a story, of course, of somebody who had been attacked, I believe, by robbers and had been left bloodied in the street. And people passed by. People passed by. People looked at him and scorned the fact. And, it is interesting how the Bible, a document written so long ago, could have in it so much that clearly governs our lives, but importantly, incidents that we all can immediately relate to.
True.
Because those describe human conduct, human behavior, which transcends culture, transcends societies, it transcends nationality. It doesn't matter which country you're in. That we have a problem where we look down on people. We say, no, we don't want he in my car, we don't want she, or they're going to mess up my car, whatever the situation might be. And so the story was, of course, that somebody who had been brutally attacked and left on the side of the road to die. All these people, including religious high priests and things, passed by on the other side. They say, no, I don't have time with that. And it was, in fact, somebody. And what I thought was interesting about the Good Samaritan, it was somebody from a different sect, if you will, where, they used to say, the Jews and the Samaritans didn't mix. Right? Okay. So it was somebody of the Jews and the Pharisees, however it went. But there's somebody from a different sect. And there you had a situation where this Good Samaritan stopped and helped.
Yep.
And I think we all need to consider that all of us, from premier to carpenter to mason to fisherman to doctor to lawyer to whoever, all of us as human beings at some point will need the help of others. All of us. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what position you hold. There will be a point in our lives when we need the help of others.
Absolutely.
And I think that if we come to that realization, we would seek to be kinder and gentler. And I believe if we can achieve that, we end stigma, we end attacks on each other, we go back to domestic abuse, we minimize or if not eliminate those types of situations, and we work together as a society. So that is my hope, and I hope that I'm not being overly optimistic, but I have a deep and abiding faith in the ability of our people to rise to the challenge. And the fact that we're seeing the tremendous strides made in terms of, on the government side, providing the necessary facilities and the necessary care. So many people criticize, spend all day criticizing, and that is understandable, that is their nature. But as you said earlier, those who are actually doing the work and those who are actually getting the care and those who are actually in need of the care, we are seeking to respond to that.
Absolutely.
Right? And I would like to join you in publicly commending PAHO for the tremendous effort that they have made and continue to make here. I would want to publicly commend the entire team in the Ministry of Health for the effort that has been made thus far. And the health of a nation is the wealth of a nation, which is absolutely critical that we get this right, and I think we're on the right path.
So in closing, let me just give some contact information. So people can, the public can reach the mental health unit at 469-5614. That's a straight line. 469-5614 or 469-5521. This is the government switchboard, and the extension is 6816 or 6817. Also, you can reach us through our mobile phone 660-9551. Let me take this opportunity, Premier, to thank you very much for allowing me some time on your program. Let me thank the listening audience, and as I said, there's an open invitation to you guys, and let's all be each other's keeper. Thank you again, and good night.
Okay, thank you very much, and God bless you, and keep up the good work. Really appreciate it. All right, that was Mr. Coffey, who leads the health promotion unit. The mental health unit, forgive me. And he was here to share some information as we talk about mental health. This is Mental Health Week, if you will. We are talking about mental health, trying to raise awareness which is absolutely critical. Ladies and gentlemen, you listen to On the Mark. It is now 10 minutes to the hour of 9 o'clock. I'm going to open the lines now and take some calls at 869-469-1616 and 869-469-1700. Those are the numbers to call if you would want to be a part of the show this evening. While we wait for the calls, which I hope will come, let me just give a few updates. I was very happy on Saturday last to join the Honorable Prime Minister Dr. Terence Drew and my dear friend, the Ambassador of the Republic of China, Taiwan, in St. Kitts and Nevis, His Excellency Michael Lin, and of course the Honorable Alexis Jeffers and others in a march to mark Taiwan's National Day. Taiwan celebrated its 111th National Day, what they call 10-10, the 10th of October, and so that will have been celebrated this week. And we had the march on Saturday to commemorate, if you will, and to celebrate with our dear friends Taiwan. I want to extend congratulations to them on their 111th National Day, and to again renew publicly our commitment as an island and as a nation to the relationship that we've enjoyed with Taiwan since our independence in 1983. In fact, Taiwan, I am told, was one of the first countries to recognize St. Kitts and Nevis and to have formal diplomatic relations established with us way back then. I think it was, and we ought to give credit to the vision of Sir Kennedy Simmons, the Right Excellent and Right Honorable Sir Kennedy Simmons, our national hero, who was, as first Prime Minister, the person who had the foresight to establish relations with Taiwan all the way back in 1983. We are standing today on that platform that he would have built, and a platform, I think, that has served the people of St. Kitts and Nevis well. And so I would want again to thank our dear friends from Taiwan, to wish them all the very best, and to continue to try to see what we can do to assist them internationally to make sure that their voice is heard and that Taiwan is able to play its role in international affairs. This doesn't mean that we have any fight with China, mainland China. We welcome, of course, Chinese investment. We welcome good and cordial relations with everyone. But it does mean that in the context of our diplomatic relations, we think that the world has room for China and for Taiwan. It doesn't have to be one or the other. We feel that there is a time now for us to move as we look at what is happening in Ukraine. We look at the Russian aggression in Ukraine, and we say it is time that we promote peace, that we as people seek to have our world be in a world of peace where our people can live, work, and exist and have meaningful lives, free of war, free of crime, free of any type of attacks, free of abuse. And that for us is critically important. So happy National Day, Taiwan. We wish you all the very best. Let's go to the phones and take the first call. Good evening, you're on the mark.
Good evening, Premier Brantley. How are you?
I am well, thank you. Good evening to you.
Yeah, giving God thanks for life, you know.
Yes.
My condolences go out to the families of those who are grieving by whatever cause. Now, when the gentleman was speaking, you know, something went to my mind. I said, a lot of our people, both in St. Kitts and Nevis, are under great stress. You know, election creates excitement. And at the end of the election, a lot of trauma. People's lives are turned upside down. And I was wondering, do political parties provide any sort of maybe private treatment for their candidates? It can't be easy to put in your all and then you don't succeed. You know what I mean?
You're saying when the candidates lose, they need treatment?
Yes, I think so.
What treatment they need?
Huh?
What treatment they need? You come up with some very interesting theories. I've not heard this one before, so I'm curious.
No, I've been always thinking about it.
Yes, so I'm curious. Why do you say they should require some counseling?
You could imagine. No, everybody goes with the expectation of winning, eh?
No, I don't think that's right.
You don't think people go with expectation?
No. Some people go in with no expectation of winning. They go in because they have nothing better to do.
You think so?
I'm telling you.
The amount of energy they put out. And the amount of connection, because they then have they then get people connected to them who have high expectation.
Mhm.
I mean, we got to face it, you know. Many people have not recovered from the last election. I mean, emotionally, yeah?
Mhm.
You hear it in their voices. You see it in their actions. Some people's lives have been turned upside down. You know, the possibility exists when the elections start that I may lose my job. Just a thing, right? And our people are aware of sometimes overburdening themselves with debt and responsibilities. Many take a lot of things for granted that they'll always be there.
Mhm.
And then the results are read. And to your horror, allow me you, right? To your horror, you realize, boy, I don't have a job tomorrow. And then the economy is so small, and given the world economy itself in such a shape, it is not just easy to pack up and leave, because usually that's what people might do. They might migrate to look employment somewhere else. But when you have the world economy going into recession, I always wonder how they cope, and do people reach out to them after? Because everybody loves a winner, eh?
So I'm understanding it, therefore, to say that perhaps we need to set up some kind of counseling for.
Yeah, I wanted to ask the gentleman so, because I think sometimes some things can be done on the radio, you know?
Mm-hmm.
How to cope with disappointment. I mean, because you can't just think that, oh, when I go home, I'm going to sit down. I wonder how a lot of the candidates have they been able to find another job. Did it ever occur to you?
Well, I really.
But I mean, you're on the winning side. Think about those on the other side.
Well, I can't say I've given much thought to it. I confess, as I said, this is a new idea. I think that people going into a situation, yes, there may be some disappointment, but they understand that this is the nature of what it is. I got a call the other day from a friend who asked me if I felt disappointed or felt a sense of loss that I was now in opposition when just a few months ago I was in government. And I told him no.
Well, you see, maybe you are stronger emotionally until you reach in the house. Because you know how you always gone in there. I mean, it may not occur to you now, you know. Because remember, the side you're on depend on sometimes the impact you can make. It's not so?
Yes, it does. It does.
And then you have your people who had all their hopes and expectations on you, not you personally, yeah? Let me use the word, but you know what you mean.
Yes, of course. Mm-hmm.
Well, if Brantley was over there, I would have get this, because, you know, most people, that's how they look at things. Not really on a national basis. We're very personal. And I keep thinking about it. I said, imagine, one day you're king, next day you're papa. But especially the younger people, because I realized that most of the parties had, on all sides, younger people, some of them were just starting their career. And if you were working for the government before the election, is it possible or impossible for you to return to your job? Based on the case with the young man, Nata?
Yeah, well, as my understanding from the Nata case is they're saying that unless you're in some kind of sensitive position, that there is no prohibition on somebody like Mr. Nata contesting an election, being involved in politics. You remember that our civil service rules prohibit the involvement. So that is suggesting that is no longer the case. Many people have different views on it because, of course, it raises the issue of how you govern the civil service in those circumstances. But I think, Carl, it also behooves public servants to remember that they're first and foremost public servants, that they are not politicians, because that is part of the problem. A lot of people in these positions take on whatever political color. And so if their party is not in power, they try to sabotage. If their party is in power, some of them try to abuse that power, and therefore go out and are very political in everything that they do. Some of them
run campaign from the government office.
Well, exactly, which as we all know is improper. And I think those are the individuals who sometimes find themselves in difficulty if the government changes. But the bulk of public servants, the rank and file, and many who are conscientious and head various departments, don't find themselves in any difficulty at all.
But to tell you the truth, because I was in the government service and I saw it, even among the rank and file, people begin to line up. You understand? They line up behind parties. I don't mean just say, well, I'm going to vote for this. Vocal and the carrying on in the offices and so. But we got to be a little more mature. Because, as I said, because I've been thinking about it. I mean, I am retired and all of that and all of that. But I keep wondering about all of these young people who ran and lost. Some of them were public servants. Can they go back to work, or have they gone back to work? Is it possible? And so we're talking about mental health, these are mental health issues. You wake up in the morning and you got nowhere to go. Some of them will go into self-employment, depending on their capability or whatever their preference. But I think the Mental Health Association should reach out to them. This is what I'm talking about. Find out how are you getting through, how are you coping. Rather than you, so-and-so going on funny, this person is drinking heavily. You see what I'm getting at?
So who do you think are some of the candidates for some counseling?
Huh?
Who do you think? Who would you refer to counseling of those who were there and are no longer there?
I am thinking that the Mental Health Association should actually reach out, because that's the campaign. It's part of their work.
So you don't have anybody that you would recommend
To do what?
that need help, that need counseling?
Everybody, man, even the supporters need help. Some of them, you'd have heard how they were all worked up and everything, and how they were carrying on and making enemy with everybody. Then now we find that they're in isolation. I mean, that is why sometimes people act so frantic when they have election. They act as if their whole life depends on the results. So when it doesn't go their way, you think they'll go home and say, well, all right, next time now.
Well, we definitely need to do some work to change that. But I think you're brought...
I was putting the onus on the Mental Health Association.
Right, for them to reach out.
Run on the radios and maybe on the Facebook and so.
Yes.
Coping mechanisms when things don't work out. And maybe give suggestion as to what they could do in the meantime. Maybe exercise, get a new hobby or something like that.
Right.
Yeah, because it can't be easy for anybody. It can't be even easy for those on the ruling side who did not win. People criticize or whatever. So I pray that we will have a little more compassion. Because I think we lack compassion. Because anybody at all could have won, anybody could have lost, eh? And so they no need to rejoice over people, put down people, make them feel worse than they do. Make them feel like a failure. So we're talking serious mental health, because that is an additional stress until the ordinary stress of just getting to life. And a lot of people don't believe in God, so they got to carry their own load. When you have faith in God, He said, cast your burdens on the Lord and He will bear you up. And a lot of us who are near to our people, we must reach out to them. You can't be always under the clothes, and because election come, you pretend you don't know them. Election passed, well, I don't know them no more. You look in new connection.
Okay.
You know how that could feel? Have you ever felt that way?
I have not, but I could understand your point. So we understand that you've raised a very interesting point.
Yeah, it had been on my mind.
Yes.
I said, Lord, what happened to all of these young people who put themselves up and this morning wake up without a job?
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you for your contribution. I think a very interesting perspective, and I'm pretty sure that you have some candidates that you think require counseling based on their behavior and the fact that, as you say, they've gone from hero to zero. But that really is a matter. I have not had, I must confess, those types of concerns. I feel that when you offer yourself for public service, if your heart is in the right place and you're doing it for the right reasons, and you respect that the people ultimately will be the ones to make that decision, then there is very little need, in my view, to be upset, because the voice of the people is the voice of God, and what they decide we must accept, and it's as simple as that. Let me go back to the phones. It's 6 minutes past the hour of 9 o'clock. Good evening, you're on the mark.
Yes, good evening, Honorable Matt.
Good evening to you.
It really make some point, but it takes too long. Yes, Matt. When you go for election, right, you're supposed to look over you want. When you we running behind the people, we supposed to get what we want. Cause election gone, and we just scrambling like the headless fowl because they studied us, and now we don't work for them. I mean, play with them in the car and tell them what I'm going to say. Come in, back it down. Take care and tell your wife hello.
All right, my dear. Well, thank you very much for that. I truly appreciate that. Let us stick with the phones. 869-469-1616 and 1700. Let's go back. We have somebody on the phone. Let's go back.
Good evening, Dr. Sheriff.
Good evening to you. How are you?
I am good.
Yes. What do you have for me?
Birthday is going out to Alfred Gums at Bad Village, coming from his 3 little children. Ephesians 4 verse 31 and 32. Let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and evil speaking be put away from you with all malice. And be ye kind one to another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, even as Christ's sake has forgiven you. Sympathy is going out to the Manners family in Canada on the passing of their adopted daughter. May God continue to bless you all, and good night again.
All right, my
God
dear.
in prayer.
Yes, your voice sounds strong. Thank you. God bless you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're taking your calls. While we wait for the phones to light up again, let me just go back. I was reporting, on, of course, on the engagement for Taiwanese National Day. The phones are ringing, so let's go back to the phones. Good evening, you're on the mark. Hello?
Good night.
Yes, you're on the air. Go ahead, please.
In the past, I've been hearing a lot about investors and so. So I think I have a little opinion. In terms of the independence celebration, I think that could expand a little bit more, like have the cultural committee plan a week of activities, and we have like a good celebration coming on to the independence Day, like having the freedom concert, having a date and an alternative date, having a parade with where we displaying the cultural icons and the cultural different aspects and the national heroes and different things, and make it an investment where people want to come home. Remember, this I see I'm calling about aviation, and so, you know, that is another way in which you would want people who come in from foreign and come back home, apart from the culture, man. Rather than looking investors, be an investor yourself. I have a few more points I will call back in, but that was just the first opinion.
All right, well, thank you very much for that. And yeah, there is, in fact, a calendar of activities for independence each year. A number of things that occur in terms of you have Independence Run, you have church services, you have concerts, you have lectures, you have quite a lot of activity. Each year a whole roster is put out. But I hear you. The truth is that we have Culturama, which is a type of celebration. We have Carnival, which is a type of celebration. So we have summer in terms of Culturama, and then Christmas in terms of Carnival. And our independence falls in between in September. So there is already quite a bit of activity associated with that. And so we are hopeful that, of course, that would continue. The only unfortunate thing is September is the most active period, it seems, for hurricanes. So a few years now, our independence celebrations have been marred by storms or the threat of storms. So we continue, caller. But thanks for the input. I think that that's important that we all share our views and opinions on matters that are impacting us. The Prime Minister, Dr. Drew, would have made an announcement at the walk for the Taiwanese celebration of Taiwanese 111th National Day that he will be making his first official state visit, and that will be to Taiwan. So he has chosen to visit Taiwan as his very first official state visit, and I want to publicly thank him because he has extended an invitation to me as Premier of Nevis, and my colleague, the Honorable Alexis Jeffers, Deputy Premier. Both of us will join his delegation to Taiwan, which will go from November the 5th, I think, to November 12th. I think those are the dates. And that is significant because we can't remember in recent times that has happened where the Premier of Nevis has been invited to accompany the Prime Minister on any official delegation, and even more so where they are of different parties and in fact on different sides of the aisle. And so I feel that it is a very good gesture that the Honorable Prime Minister has made. He has privately said to me and publicly said to the nation that he's committed to building a better relationship between the federal government and the NIA, between Nevis and St. Kitts, between our two peoples. And that is something that I've been advocating for quite some time. And we thought, of course, that Team Unity was the answer. I still believe that Team Unity could have been the answer if we had a different captain. That was really the problem. We had an excellent team, but a poor captain. And so we ended up in a situation where that ship ran aground because the captain couldn't captain the ship in a way that ensured that we were able to have smooth sailing throughout the term. And when the time came and the captain was asked to change course, the captain refused and the ship ran aground. And so we are where we are. The country continues. The people have made a decision. On St. Kitts, certainly, they voted and gave the Labour Party 6 of the 8 available seats. And on Nevis, the people of Nevis also made a decision and gave the CCM all 3 of the available seats. And so it is now time to get down to work. Now I notice that there are some who are seeking to create some mischief. They seem to be upset that the Prime Minister and I are trying to develop a relationship. I'm seeing a lot of criticisms of myself, criticisms of him. And I asked the question recently on social media, is it the position now that the Premier of Nevis should not have a relationship with the Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis? Because if that is the case, well, we might as well secede and be done with it, because I don't see how you can function in this country if you are constantly at war, the government in Nevis with that in St. Kitts. It makes no sense. So there will be issues, some of them certainly difficult and thorny issues, like this fair share issue that we continue to advocate needs to be resolved. But at the end of the day, the people having spoken in the election on August 5th, it is now time to roll up our sleeves and get to work. And that is what I have been trying to do. And in Dr. Drew, he has so far kept his word on everything that he has said to me that he will do, he has done. And that is all really I want from Basti. A partner, and a reliable partner. Not somebody who is going to try to undermine you and try to backtalk you and try to do everything in their power while smiling in your face to stab you in the back. You need a partner that you can rely on. And that really is what it comes down to. And I have said that Nevis and the NIA is a reliable partner. And Dr. Drew has so far demonstrated that he and the Labour Party that he leads can be a reliable partner as well. Let us move the country forward. That is what this is about. So whether it's in geothermal and the letter that he kindly sent to the CDB to move the project forward, whether it's in monies that he has made available, monies that went to the office of the Prime Minister from Taiwan that he has made available to do a major project here at the park in Nevis, and now extending an invitation, unprecedented, to the Premier and the Deputy Premier to accompany him to Taiwan. I mean, this is the type of thing that we look to and feel that if we can continue in that vein, it really augurs well for the country. And that is ultimately what we as politicians ought to be about. Not ourselves, but our country. Now, let me go back to the phones. I'm sorry. Good evening, caller. Sorry for taking so long. You're on the mark.
Paternal love and greetings to you, the brother Premier of Nevis.
Yes, good evening to you.
How your night is going? I'm just coming from far, but I don't come closer radio to know your program setting. But I'm just wanting to actually, basically with the discussion that you all is looking to go forward in Thailand with you and the Prime Minister and whoever else is carrying from your Nevis and the St. Kitts end. What are the aspects you are looking for from that dialogue?
Well, of course, Taiwan is a friend and has been a good friend to our country since independence. And so we're looking to further strengthen that friendship. That is what these trips are about. It's to look at projects and areas for cooperation, scholarships, training, education, physical projects, infrastructural development. Taiwan, as you know, has been instrumental in assisting the Federation thus far. We have in St. Kitts the Eco Park, we have the RLB, We have, the area that was done in Old Road, all that reclamation to make that area safer. Taiwan has invested in Nevis, in the Malcolm Gishard Park. We have had countless students now who have studied in Taiwan. So it's a wide range of areas of cooperation.
So are these things will be real for the discussion where you just outlined going forward? There will be more that performance towards project beyond what is done set here already?
Well, the idea is that you're looking to see what else can be done. And so the areas of cooperation
come to fruition because Taiwan is looking for support in getting on the Security Council seat, right? You know that, right?
No, Taiwan has not been looking for any support to get on the Security Council seat.
I asked you, sure.
You asked me a question, I've answered you.
I know you answered in the way you want to put it in your diplomatic way, but anyway, my brother, Taiwan needs to sit himself and relax because it's time now. The world understand that Taiwan is the third largest when it comes to technology, and you know that, right?
So what is the point? Because they're the third largest in technology, they should sit down?
Second-hand technology coming from Taiwan was not giving us the emphasis of what we need for when it comes to the classes that the school children is adopting in what they call it, the computerized system zone. And you're looking at these things here, you better look at them carefully with the deals them you are going out there with Taiwan. Blessed night to your brother Premier. Keep it up and be wiser than Taiwan because all of them are garbage cooks.
Right. Okay, all right. I appreciate your input, but I've always said to you that we try to maintain some standards on this show. And referring to a country as garbage and crooks is not acceptable. Simply not that. If that is your view, you don't have to air it on this show. Air it someplace else. We are talking serious issues on this show. And you have come on and you're attacking Taiwan, and I don't know, because you have had no basis for your attack. You said they need to go sit down because they're the third largest technological country in the world. I don't understand the correlation. That is what we call a non sequitur. It doesn't follow. So I want you, as I always said to you, I welcome the debate and the dialogue. You have taken to calling in on the show regularly, and you're welcome. But put your thoughts in order and put things in order before you call in, because I like to have a good conversation which enriches you, enriches me, and enriches those who are listening. And so there's no basis whatsoever for attacking Taiwan, because Taiwan has been our best partner internationally. Look around the Federation. The DNA of Taiwan is on almost everything that we have seen. And yes, Taiwan has asked for our support internationally. Taiwan is not recognized by China as an independent country. In fact, Taiwan is only recognized now by a handful of countries globally. Most countries adhere to the one China policy, which says Taiwan is a part of China. So Taiwan, yes, asks for our support and our advocacy in the international forums that we exist and that they don't. And so in the Caribbean, they have St. Kitts Nevis, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines. They have Belize. Those are the last four allies they have in our region. They used to have Grenada. Grenada has shifted back to mainland China. So we need to be mindful of what we say and really inform what we say with facts, so that we don't get into emotion and just talking for the sake of talking. You did say you weren't close to a radio, so you hadn't been listening, and I recognize that. But I think that that's important going forward, that when we call, we have our ideas lined up and that we try to make sense of what we are saying, so that those that are listening can be enriched by the conversation. That's really what we're trying to do here. So let's go back to the phones and take some more calls. Good evening, you're on the mark.
Good night again.
Good evening.
Yeah, good night again. There was some mention of the non-established plan. I'm wondering if there would be a person from the government sector going around to the different government sectors and explaining the non-established plan, in case persons are curious of the current benefits or what they can do to better their situation for the long-term benefit of the non-established plan. The reason why make me ask that because I hear a report from Dr. Joan said that there was $2 million being spent per month on the peace program, and each person average like $500, and he have like a lot of persons with education status and so on. They know appointed, and their money now average to the $2,000 as the $500 for the peace program, where you went to school and acquire your proper education. So me I wonder if government also have implemented something in the non-established plan to evaluate persons who would or should have raised a pay and that start.
Yeah, Kola, thank you very much. The non-established plan was really designed as a program to provide some retirement benefits for non-established workers. The difficulty that we had is that we have many of our workers who work for 20, 30, sometimes as many as 40 years in the public service, but were never appointed to the civil service. So they were never part of what we call a permanent establishment. And as a consequence, they didn't have any job security. They got people who could be asked to leave at any point in time. And in addition to that, they had no retirement package, no retirement benefits. If you're a member of the public service, then you get a pension when you retire, and non-established workers did not qualify for that from the government. All they could depend on whatever they would get from Social Security. So there was an outcry about that, and we sought to remedy that, and we have kept our commitment. And I think as the 1st of September we have introduced a plan as a way of dealing with that. And you ask, is that being explained? I am told that there have been a series of town hall meetings which was done by the committee that we put in place, headed by P.S. Wakely Daniel, to deal with this particular issue, and that they had a number of town hall meetings with non-established workers. I am committed as a government to continue that engagement. I think it's important that people understand. We're also going to try and create some flyers and things like that with the benefits, so that people have a sense of what they are entitled to, and that is our hope that we can do that. And we hope that this is just an interim measure, because we are hopeful that ultimately we will have the legislation amended so that those what we're doing now could be enshrined in legislation, so that people can actually pick up the law and read it for themselves. Right now what we've designed is a policy that is guiding the Nevis Island administration. So I hope that that is clear in terms of what we have done and what it is we are doing and what it is we intend to do. I believe that that plan for non-established workers is one of the major achievements of this government. And so I go back to the constant assertion that nothing is happening. Earlier, if you would have been in tune, you would have heard of the giant strides that we're making in terms of mental health. We now, for the first time in the history of Nevis, have a dedicated mental health unit in Prospect, away from the hospital, a unit that is self-contained, staffed, properly equipped. And you heard Mr. Coffey, for example, speaking for himself about, how we are miles ahead of what is happening elsewhere. And yet you hear people say nothing is happening. You look at non-established workers who have been promised and promised. I am proud that we are a government that has delivered for them and has put something in place for them. You heard the outcry about fuel surcharge and the difficulties that people were having. We have come up with a plan, and we're dealing with that. I stood in the line at Lynn's Deli the other day trying to buy a little lunch, and a lady came up to me and hugged me, one of the best hugs I've had in a long time. And I said, "Why are you hugging me so tight for?" She said, "Lord, I get me electricity bill, thank you." This is what a government that is responsive to the needs of the people does. And that is what we have been doing. So when you hear the constant refrain about nothing happening, it's like a stuck record. And those of you who know, a stuck record play the same line over and over and over and over, and it matters not what happens, they play the same line. Let's go back to the phones. It is 25 minutes past the hour of 9 o'clock. Good evening, you're on the mark.
Hello?
Hello, you're on the air.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Sympathy is going out to you on the passing of your great aunt, Lucille Bartlett and Patricia Bartlett.
her aunt, died in Tampa, Florida on October 1st at the age of 106.
106.
Yes.
Wow. Well, thank you for that reminder, and I really ought to have said something at the top of the show. I actually don't know Lucille, or can't remember having met her, but I've heard about her, and hello?
That's your grandmother's sister.
Yes, yes.
And Patrick, Dr. Bartlett's aunt.
Yes. Well, I certainly would like to extend condolences to the entire family on that loss. 106 is certainly, quite phenomenal in terms of age, that we have a centenarian in our midst. That I think is really wonderful. But I would like to extend condolences to the entire family. Are you related as well?
Yes.
Okay. I can't say I'm picking up the voice. So
down the hill.
Down the hill.
Tony.
I got you now. All right. Well, my condolences as well to you. Okay?
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much for that. So, I should have said it at the top of the show. Forgive me. It did happen, as you say, since the 1st of October, and I really didn't recall to say it. But we have lost who we know as Aunt Lucille. But as I said, I really can't recall that I ever met her. But I have seen photographs, and she lived in the States, and she died at 106. And so condolences to the entire family. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to On the Mark. I'm your host, Mark Brantley. And if you're tuned in, it must mean that you're listening to the Eastern Caribbean's only powerhouse, VON Radio, the voice of Nevis. Let's go back to the phones. Good evening, you're On the Mark.
Good evening again. While you're on the topic of electricity, have the government ever thought in investing in any more of the windmills using the sun, the solar area in terms of it, buying solar panels, and because we can what the word I must use now? We can determine whether gas gun drop or is because of what going out there. So we got to try and make ends meet in here. So I think if we get invest a little bit more in the windmills, where we generate some of the wind energy and use up some of the sun, because if anything happen out there and gas rise up, I'll be electrical bill going back up again, because we don't got no control over that. So I think one control measure for Awi is to invest more in some more of the windmill and the sun energy or the geothermal.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for that. The windmills, the wind energy investment was not government. That was a private company. The government simply buys the power from them. I think it's called Windwatt. So there's no investment that was made by the government there, as far as I'm aware. The solar, the government has not invested in any solar farms for itself, but certainly private companies have invested. I think places like Value Mart and those TDC to some extent, I believe, have invested in solar, and we do encourage householders to use solar. In fact, they can bring in solar panels without duties. I think that is the current policy. In relation to geothermal, I have reported on that to indicate that we are now headed, I believe, in the right direction. The Caribbean Development Bank has been engaged on that geothermal project. They say that they have funding available, and the Prime Minister, Dr. Drew, has sent the necessary correspondence to them to give the green light for the project to proceed. So I am optimistic that we can finally get some traction in relation to this geothermal project, which will really be the answer to our electricity generation needs, not only in Nevis but in the Federation as well. Let's go back to the phones. Good evening, you're On the Mark.
Yeah, Mr. Mark, sympathy to your family.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
All right, I appreciate that very much. Ladies and gentlemen, let's stick with the phones. Good evening, you're On the Mark. Hello?
Good night. I feel you should give a man a job in the government. Like get a pay because he calling in on every issue and he don't have a strong point.
Which man you mean?
The man that calling every minute.
Mm-hmm.
He need a job in the government.
To give him a job in the government?
That we want. because he can find fault to everything. So give him a job. He gonna call back 3 more times.
All right. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, Mark.
All right. Okay, good to hear you. All right. Good. We are having a little fun tonight. One thing about On the Mark, people feel comfortable because it is a people show. They call in and they raise their points, and I'm happy for that. Let's go back to the phones again. Good evening. You're On the Mark. Hello.
Yeah, good evening. Tell the lady me fire. Good evening. Tell the lady me fire.
How you know you shut up about?
Tell the lady me fire.
I ask you how you know you shut up about. All right. I tell you, what a show. What an interesting space that we inhabit. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to On the Mark. I'm your host, Mark Brantley. We're inviting your calls at 869-469-1616 and 1700. Some good news. Just to advise that the financing now for our major road project from Cliff Dwellers over to camps, that financing has been secured. We want to thank our bankers for stepping forward and partnering with us. And we are expecting that project is going to kick off very soon. In fact, I spoke to Minister Spencer Brand, our Minister of Works today, who feels that he can mobilize as quickly as next week. If that is the case, then we are looking forward to having that project in some stage of advancement, certainly by the end of this year. I would want to extend my thanks to our bankers. I would also want to extend my thanks to the proposed contractors with Surrey Paving on that project, and of course to insist that we get quality work for our money, and that we get a good road that will serve the people of Nevis for the next foreseeable future. This for me is again demonstrative of our commitment to address infrastructural needs of the island. And as you would have heard tonight as we address the issues of mental health, that we are looking at holistic development. We are not just putting down concrete in terms of building roads and bridges. That is important, but we are also investing in our people, investing in mental health and our ability to respond. We're investing in education and training with our new TVET center and our upgrades at our schools. We're investing in more scholarship opportunities, more assistance to students, including students studying online. Another policy change that I'm very proud of, because prior to this government, students who studied online did not get any assistance from the government. They are now getting assistance from the government. And so these are areas that we are investing in infrastructure, investing in our people, investing in healthcare, investing in education, investing in water, investing in electricity. All of that, I think, ultimately impacts our quality of life. And so for those naysayers who continue to criticize and say nothing is happening, I said, look around. So much is happening on this island, and I'm so proud of what we've been able to do in agriculture, what we've been able to do in housing, what we've been able to do in so many areas. Look at the significant investment recently made in solid waste. New trucks, new excavator, new equipment, mulching machine. We now have plastic baling that's happening. We're encouraging persons to take their plastics to the landfill now, so that we can bale them and deal with some aspects of recycling. All of this is now happening on our little island of Nevis, and I'm very proud to be leading this island and leading a team that is committed, 100% committed to the development of our little island. Let me go back to the phones. Okay, please be patient with us. We have 35 minutes left. We're taking your calls, 869-469-1616 and 869-469-1700. Of course, as I talk about food security, we are very proud of a project there at Indian Castle, where we are developing what we've called a fruit orchard. We're expanding that, and I want to again commend the Honorable Alexis Jeffers for a phenomenal job that he's done there. We want to see that develop to the point where it can become a showpiece. It already is, but I am looking forward to when those coconut palms and other fruit trees mature and really start to bear. I think when that happens, we will all be very, very proud of that investment that is being done today. We're investing today for bigger and better and brighter Nevis tomorrow. That's what investment does. It pays dividends, and that is what we are doing. Let me go back to the phones. Good evening, you're on the mark.
Yes, good evening again.
Yes.
I have been thinking, how many days will you all be staying in Taiwan?
I think the trips are normally about 7 days.
Hello?
The trips are usually about 7 days.
All right. What plans, if any, do you have to try and seek investment in the country?
Remember, I'm not the head of delegation. The delegation is headed.
So you wouldn't be given an opportunity to.
We may have the opportunity to have discussions on the sidelines, but I'm not yet sure of that. So,
an agenda hasn't been drawn up yet.
No.
So haven't they? But you say maybe you don't know. I was thinking that maybe investment groups could be met, and I know Taiwan has been making a lot of investment in social services and infrastructure. But if you notice that the mainland Chinese, mainland China, is invested more in the productive sector, in that day into the business. And I was wondering if it would be possible, because the matter can be discussed between you and the Prime Minister, in terms of seeking investment, say in technology, maybe assembling, some sort of assembling, making things that have a higher value added. Because if our representatives are going to the country to make something productive should come out of it, not just the ceremonial thing. So I hope that is on your mind, and on the Prime Minister's mind. Because every time I turn around, I hear mainland China investing in Antigua. They're in fact about to take over Liat. In Barbados, they're going to put down an athletic stadium. So to counteract it, because all of the Caribbean islands seem to be heading towards mainland China, and they have been coming up with investment. So I don't know if you have thought of what you would want them to do, other than the one they're now working on, to provide employment opportunities. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, I'm listening.
Yeah, that is what is on my mind. Let me ask another question. Somebody made a statement when you were the Foreign Affairs Minister in relation to the citizenship by investment about some gang or whatever in Lebanon, I think it's Lebanon, they said, were producing fake documents which were being used by some people to try and get refugee status in Europe. Have you heard that? Is there any truth to that story?
I am not aware that happened under my watch. I'm not aware about any.
I wasn't saying under your watch.
I'm not. Well, I'm just advising you. I'm not aware that happened under my watch, or indeed aware of any Lebanon connection. I did read an article.
Turkey. They said it came out of.
I did read.
Most of them were Lebanese.
Well, I did read an article which said that some smuggling ring was broken up and people arrested in Europe, and that they had fake Senkis Nevis identification. But beyond that, I'm not aware of anything else. I mean, I
wonder what step our government has taken, because when you begin to create doubt about the genuineness of our documents and stuff, it affects the whole business.
Yeah, but what step can the government take in those circumstances? If somebody in a basement...
The country thing, let us say where it generates from, right? The country it generates from, say Turkey.
Yeah, so somebody in the basement in Turkey decide they're going to forge a Senkis Nevis passport.
Then you contact the Turkish government.
To say what?
To do the tracking for you.
Yeah, but even when you track them, what you going to do?
Then it becomes a crime. Then
a crime where?
It serves as a warning to other people who may want to try the same thing.
Well, I understand that, caller, but you say, what is the response of the federal government? I think all we can do is
the federal government response, as I said, is to track and try to encourage the source government to try and eradicate it. Maybe that's the most they could do. And the other countries that are now becoming suspicious of our documents, our citizenship certificates, whatever they are. We have to give them assurance that we are looking after the matter. Maybe that's the most you could do, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the most you could do. So look, these people were never research, dual, what we don't talk about when we investigate in the background. We should have a list of all the persons who actually sell or serve the unit. I mean, as private sellers overseas. And see if we could track any one of them to these gangs. Because one false step could severely affect the whole system. Because I am concerned, and that's what I'm talking about. We are depending heavily on the citizenship by investment. And when you have people out there criminally deliberately setting us up for failure, because maybe don't look so much as it is. Once it begins to create a lot of doubt in people's mind, whenever they say one, is this genuine? The genuineness of our citizenship documents if it becomes a problem, we are the ones who are going to suffer. So whatever we can do, whatever we have to do to protect it abroad, we should do it. That's simply what I'm saying.
Okay, thank you for your contribution. I understand the point that you're seeking to make, caller, but I again go back to asking sometimes if, we as a people demand the impossible from our government. If somebody decides they're going to try to forge a Sinkis Nevis document, all the government can do is issue a statement that says a forged document. I mean, what else are we to do? We're going to tell them stop? We beg them stop? If it is that we can have them prosecuted in their country, then so be it. But it's just like, for example, if some gang somewhere decide they're going to forge U.S. currency, is the United States government going to do what? All we can do is really is to seek to put out the necessary statements to advise the world that this has happened, but it is not a reflection on Sinkis and Nevis because our documents are secure. Our documents are produced, I think, by the Canadian Banknote Company. They are documents that are of the highest standard in terms of our passport documents. And so I recognize that these things will happen from time to time. I think sometimes, however, we need to be prudent and sensible in terms of how we respond, that it is not everything that requires us to go into a panic. We simply need to be able to explain to the world, and to me a press statement will be sufficient. Let's go back to the phones. We have 15 minutes left. Good evening, you're on the mark.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening to you.
I'm just trying to get someone from Nevelec to see if they could do anything about the post light by the Charleston Primary School where they cross from the gate to the back. It's been out for over 2 months now.
Okay, have you called Nevelec?
I actually went and made a report already about a month ago. Or just over a month ago.
Okay. All right, well, hopefully they're listening to you. In any event, I will send a message to the chairman to see that they can try to address this issue of a street light. Yeah? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, quarter to the hour of 10 o'clock. I'm saying 12 o'clock. I feel like it's 12 o'clock. We have 15 minutes left and we're taking your calls. Let me go back to the phones. Good evening, you're on the mark.
Good evening. Good evening. Sympathy as well to me area representative, Mr. Jeffers. Okay, and to me point out tonight, a question. Mr. Brantley, if I'm a coach and I'm training persons from the age of maybe 6 or 7 years, from then they are grade 2, and they must perform as they reach to high school, do they have to go and leave me and go with whatever the school say when the school teachers are being paid from 8:30 to 3:30 and my program is from 4 o'clock?
I'm not understanding the question. Could you
okay.
Try again?
I have a set of children and I'm dealing with a set of children because this is an ongoing problem. I have a set of children and I'm training them and they usually excel in track and field. But as they get to the first farm area in the high school, the school is now saying that they have to do the practice sessions with them and not with the person who helped them to excel. And I'm asking if that is possible, because I do from 4, school finish from 3:30, and you've been paid to do what you have to do within the hours of 8:30 to 3:30. So whatever the parents enroll the children in, that is not your business, and you shouldn't be at fault to defer the children from their talent and push them into another sport for another sport. Do you think it is right?
Well, I'm hearing you. I can't say understand the dynamics, but certainly parents are free to enroll their children wherever they want to enroll their children.
And the schools
Right.
shouldn't be able to deprive children from their talent, because a child might want to run and maybe have football ability, but their full interest is not into the football, might be into the running. Likewise, they might have the track and field ability, but they like the football and that is their interest. We shouldn't be able to deprive them from what they see their future as. We can't just come and alter the child.
Well, my understanding, caller, my understanding is outside school hours, the parents are entitled to sign up their children for whatever programs they want to sign them up for. So I don't see what the issue is here.
Yeah, but the schools now are having programs as well with the same children, and like demanding that the children now attending their programs more than the programs that they are accustomed to.
After school hours?
After school hours.
Ah, okay. Now I understand the point you're making. All right. Well, all I can say is I shall ask a few questions, because I wasn't aware of that at all. But my sense is that parents normally have every right to determine what their children participate in outside the school hours.
But yeah, because the time short.
Hello?
Because, yeah, so if a child determines that they're doing track and field and they're training with this person, and the school determines that they have a track team, and the school determines that the child must train with the track team, the school can't train with the coach and then come and run sports there and show that this is what I'm doing and this is the product of the coach and this is the person that I believe into and can push me forward more than you who don't really show me that aspect of life.
Well,
because if we don't do that, I think we're breaking on it, at least because you move them from somebody who they believe into, you put them with somebody else, the person don't know their personality, don't know the traits, don't know much about them, and so they just lose interest. And I think I saw most of the children in my gas because they're going to pick up the drink and a little bit of smoke. And that they must see and that they're going to feel comfort in her. So if we're not going to change the training, it's not going to be better.
Okay. All right. Well, that is your view, and I'm grateful for that. I think that the view has some merit, that children stick with the same coaches throughout their career. But by the same token, we understand the system as it's currently established, that each school has their coach. So once the child leaves Charleston Primary, for example, and goes to Charleston Secondary, then they go into a different program because they have moved. Just so they will not have the same teacher all their life, they will not have the same maths teacher or English teacher. Similarly, they will not have the same coach. What we need to ensure is that all of our coaches are trained to a particular standard. So it wouldn't matter which coach they have, that they are getting exposed to the necessary level of training. But I hear your point. I'm not sure that it is workable, because it would mean, for example, that you're a primary school coach and you would be coaching a child who is now in high school when that child has moved on from you, that child has moved on to a new school, a new system, perhaps a new team, you name it. So I think that, yes, I can see the merits of what you're saying, but I'm not sure that it is workable as a practical matter, given how the system is currently organized. The first point you made about parents and after school, well, certainly parents can determine what programs they enroll their children in. And I do know that Nevis has a few track clubs, and I am certain, therefore, that the children can join those track clubs as well and get some development there also. So there are a number of possible solutions, caller, to the issue that you've raised. We have 10 minutes left on the show. We're inviting your calls. 869-469-1616, 869-469-1700. This is On the Mark. I'm your host, Mark Brantley, and I am here every Wednesday from 8 to 10. When I can't make it, then certainly we have had some guest hosts. I want to thank the Honorable Eric Evelyn, the Honorable Alexis Jeffers, the Honorable Troy Liebert. Those are the three mainstays who tend to fit in when I am not here. But once I'm on island and I am well, I try to be here because I think this is an important exercise. It is important for our democracy that we develop the capacity to talk about issues publicly, to talk about them in a way that despite how passionate we may be, we are respectful to each other, and that we develop that quality of dialogue which ultimately benefits us all and advances our Nivision civilization. So for me, these shows serve a very useful purpose in terms of strengthening and building our democracy. The caller previously raised an important issue about Taiwan and what it is we propose to do in Taiwan. As I said, I'm not the head of delegation, obviously, and so we expect that a program will be developed. The Honorable Prime Minister and his office will be developing a program, no doubt, with our friends from Taiwan as to what we're going to do. These visits are not purely symbolic. They are symbolic in the sense of showing in a public way our commitment to that relationship that we enjoy with Taiwan, but they're also important in terms of drilling down and trying to get benefits from that relationship in terms of training, in terms of security, in terms of industry and development. The caller, however, spoke to one issue which I think is an issue that we're all aware of, and that is that we have not had as much private sector Taiwanese investment in our country. It is something that we have raised and continue to raise with Taiwan, that we've had a tremendous level of government-to-government cooperation, but not so much private sector investment. And of course, Taiwan has some very large international companies. They are world leaders in terms of microchips. They're world leaders in terms of computers and technology. And so certainly there could be some opportunities for investment here, not only at the government level, but also now at the private sector level. And they have led private sector groups here in the past. In fact, I myself have met with a large group that came out largely out of the United States, a group of Taiwanese that visited looking for investment opportunities. And they have raised with us the possibility of purchasing things here like lobsters and conch and things of that nature. And so I think that it is just now for us to engage in a more meaningful way with them, to emphasize not only the government-to-government interaction, but also the opportunities at the private sector level, the opportunities for trade. And so we need to be ready and we need to make that case. So, Call, I agree with you that there's room there for greater engagement with Taiwan, as there's room indeed for greater engagement with other countries that we have friendly relations with as we seek to build our country and develop St. Kitts and Nevis. But the point that I was seeking to make is that this trip is unprecedented in the sense that you'll have the Prime Minister and the Premier from different sides of the aisle, but certainly working together, going on a trip together. I think it sends a very powerful message to St. Kitts and Nevis of cooperation and the efforts that are being made. It sends equally a very powerful message to Taiwan that St. Kitts and Nevis, together, separately, it doesn't matter. We are supportive of Taiwan and we are committed to the strong relationship that we've enjoyed and hope to continue to enjoy with the government and people of the Republic of China, Taiwan. So that really, to me, is the point that I was seeking to make, and we certainly look forward to engaging with them in Taipei when that time comes. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to On the Mark, and we've been touching a number of issues this evening. We have, of course, looked at the issue of domestic violence and condemned it unreservedly. I think that all of us need to wake up to the reality that this is a monster in our midst, and we can't defend it on any level. We can't say it's cultural, we can't say that's who we are or how we behave. We must condemn it. And for those out there who are suffering quietly, suffering silently, we provide counseling, we provide assistance to our social services. We now, of course, for those requiring assistance in terms of mental health, we have greater assistance that we've put at your disposal at our new mental health facility in Prospect, and we are committed to continuing to work with our people. That, for me, is the demonstration of a government that is committed to the welfare of our people. We understand, we care. And that is what we have been demonstrating by so many of these policies. Putting things in place to provide a little ease to our people on our electricity. Putting things in place to provide some comfort to our non-established workers in their time of retirement. Putting things in place to serve and better serve our people when they're at their lowest and need assistance in terms of mental health. Ensuring that our healthcare sector is robust. Ensuring that our education sector is robust. Ensuring that we provide better water, better distribution. Ensuring that we provide more electricity, better distribution of that, while we explore renewable energy for our island and our country. Ensuring that we invest and have more food security, that our farmers can produce more food. And incidentally, I want to just say to the young farmer, if he's listening in Cherry Gardens, who reminded me that the animal farmers are looking for land, that this is something that we have to find a solution for. I recognize the difficulty, but if we are going to push for greater food security, then we must partner in the best way we can to ensure that our farmers have the tools to produce. And so I want him to know that I heard him, and I want the people to know that as I come around and as I talk to them in groups, I talk to them in their homes, that this is a government that listens. And that is what I believe you want in your government, a government that listens. We will not always get it right. I always say that. Some people are looking for perfection. Well, we are not perfect people. And the only perfect people that I'm aware of that we had were Adam and Eve, and both of them sinned. And then we had Jesus. Beyond that, we have not had anybody else who could claim to be perfect. So, we will make mistakes from time to time, but the mark of leadership is not that you won't make a mistake, but how you respond to that. And your ability to adjust, your ability to change, your ability to listen, your ability to learn, your ability to adjust. And that is why I think that we were able to provide relief to our people, whether it's a fuel surcharge or whatever else, because we are a government that listens. And so I want you to know that when I come around and I have these conversations with you, that I am taking on board your concerns, and we are seeking as a government to resolve them. Let me just announce that we will, as a party, the Concerned Citizens Movement, be reaching out to our friends and family in the diaspora. We are announcing a number of engagements with members in the diaspora. There will be more information forthcoming, but we hope to have those engagements during the course of this month. And so we're looking to engage with our people in places like St. Martin, the U.S. Virgin Islands, the British Virgin Islands, in New York. We would like to certainly engage with our friends and families in New York before it gets too cold. So we are letting you know that certainly we want to have a conversation with you. We want you to be a part of our development. We want you to be a part of what is happening on the island. You are in the vision, and you are important to us. And so I want to thank everyone who called, everyone who participated in the show this evening, and I want us to continue to work towards making our island a kinder and gentler place. Let us work towards making Nevis the best that we can be. Look out for each other. Be your brother's keeper and your sister's helper. That, ladies and gentlemen, is our show. The banner struck up. It means we have to go. This show is rebroadcast right here on One Radio tomorrow at 1 p.m. so you can tune in. Some people say it's so nice they listen twice. Good night. God bless you, and let us take care of each other. Thank you.
The views and opinions expressed on the preceding program were solely those of the participants